Hi, everybody. I'm Julia.
Hi.
I know all of you for the most part. I'm going to go ahead and read the welcome, and then I'm going to have Emma come up and introduce our speaker tonight, Charles Jensen. So, welcome to this year's Tabula Poetica Reading Series. Please take a moment now to silence your cell phone. As we have in the past, we will continue to record these events and make the videos available on YouTube at the conclusion of this series. In addition to today's events, Tabula Poetica will host an MFA reading on December 10th. And if you're interested in reading at that event, you could see me or Jean after the event because we're still collecting a list of names. Let's see. Tabula Poetica this year is sponsored by the English Department in the Dean's Office of Wilkinson College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Whenever you enjoy a literary event, whether it's this one or another one, I encourage you to read the author's book, and we're happy to have made Charles Jensen's books available to several classes, and then we also have copies available for sale on the back table. So if you want to purchase a copy afterwards, you can. Thank you for joining us today for Wilkinson College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences signature initiative, Engaging the World, Leading the Conversation. Each year, the college selects a key social issue to examine through interdisciplinary, campus-wide conversations to promote thoughtful dialogue, mindful reflection, awareness, and empathy. The 2024-25 series focuses on the topic of gender and sexuality. Over the fall semester, we are drawing on the wide-ranging expertise of our faculty and invited speakers to engage in a multidisciplinary discussion of how the social structures of gender and sexuality shape our lives, our culture, politics, past, present, and future. The series will explore the evolution and impact of cultural, community, and legal conceptions of gender and sexuality, along with resistance and activism in countering gender inequality, community exclusion, and sexual and gender-based violence. We encourage students interested in exploring these issues past the semester to look at the Women's and Gender Studies and LGBTQ Studies minors housed in Wilkinson College. We would like to begin by extending special thanks to Karen Wilkinson and Reg Lancaster for their sponsorship of ETW. Karen is the daughter of Harmon Wilkinson, the namesake of Wilkinson College. Before welcoming Emma up, I want to remind the audience of the next ETW event, our final program for the semester. Please join us in the Foligno Theater at 7:15 p.m. on Thursday, December 5th, for a panel discussion titled Juggling Gender, Perspectives on the Ever-Changing Gender Landscape. This will be a multidisciplinary discussion around today's ever-changing landscapes of gender identity. Professor Laura Glynn will discuss challenges and opportunities around the assessment of gender identity in developmental psychological research. Professor C.K. Magnolia will share her views on the trans-panic strategy in U.S. politics from 2018 to 2024, and Professor Sally Rubin will share their groundbreaking animated documentary, Mama Has a Mustache. The panel is also joined by Chapman University alum Addison Rose Vincent, who will share their expertise as an LGBTQ+ advocate, consultant, influencer, and founder of Break the Binary. We hope to see you there, and with that, I'll introduce Emma.
Hello, everybody. I'm Emma. I think you guys know that at this point. So anyway, thanks. Hi, guys. So today I've been given the incredible opportunity to introduce the incredibly talented Charles Jensen. Jensen is an American poet, author, and editor who graduated from Arizona State University with an MFA in creative writing. While at ASU, he was a poetry editor for the literary magazine Hayden's Fairy Review. He is known for works such as the poetry book Little Burning Edens, which received the inaugural Red Mountain Review Chapbook Prize, Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing, and the book that we are all here for today, Splice of Life, a memoir in 13 film genres. Splice of Life is an insightful, compelling, clever, and unconventional memoir detailing Jensen's queer identity and queer experiences while interweaving film criticism. Devin Green, comedic chanteuse and LGBTQIA+ advocate, states that Jensen's book says, while his gay coming-of-age story is uniquely his own, paying close attention reveals that he has offered his life story to you as a friend who understands your own experiences of isolation and longing for a sense of belonging. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce the brilliant Charlie Jensen.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was great. All right, I hope I live up to that. Okay, first I would really like to sincerely thank Anna and Jean and Julia and David for having me here today, and everyone at Chapman who's made me feel so welcome. It's been an amazing day. I feel like a rock star, so thank you very much. I thought I would start by reading a little bit of Splice of Life. And as Emma mentioned, this is a book that braids together traditional memoir storytelling with discussion of a single film in each chapter, and the film and my lived experience often resonate with one another, and that was kind of what I was trying to accomplish in this was to expose how films and storytelling help us understand ourselves better by looking through our life through the prism of this other story. I'm going to read the very first essay that I wrote for this book, which I wrote in response to a call for essays about queer people's relationships with horror films. So this is about the movie Scream. How many people have seen Scream? Great. If you haven't, you must. And the genre that I consider that movie is postmodern pastiche, and that's because it's a film that's constantly commenting on itself and its genre. So I'll start there. June 1999. I strode into the classroom with a VHS copy of Scream, some notes, and all the academic bravery I could muster. My classmates in the senior seminar came to this room from every corner of the program, each with their own focus, obsession, or interest. But none of them I recognized. None shared a classroom with me these past 4 years. I didn't even know their names. To complete my film studies program, I'd written a long paper on powerful feminist women characters in Alfred Hitchcock's work. This senior project, a paper and presentation, was to satisfy my degree requirements for cultural literature, a program in which we read Freud, Lacan, Irigaray, Mulvey, Foucault, Zizek, discussed the male gaze in cinema, and deconstructed contemporary magazine advertisements to determine their subtext and subliminal messages. Over the course of the program, I wrote psychoanalytic readings of the films Heavenly Creatures and The House of Yes, watched and loved Paris is Burning, and deconstructed Art Spiegelman's Mouse books. My senior project was supposed to demonstrate not only my mastery of the techniques I'd learned from these explorations, but self-directed inquiry on a subject that intrigued me. I chose horror. I chose Scream. Even then, 3 years after its release, it was still a watershed moment in horror cinema. My presentation offered evidence that Billy and Stu were queer and closeted. With my tape queued up to the climactic scene of the film, I slid it into the VCR and adjusted the volume. With a grand gesture, I spun the television around on its casters so that no one in the room could see the movie. They were not supposed to look. They were supposed to listen. Rebel Without a Cause. Billy spends most of the first act of the film trying to have sex with Sydney. He's perfected the toxic male performance of acting like he doesn't want it too much, but making it clear that he does, in fact, really want it, but only if she's ready. And if that turned out to be now, that would be great. Billy pops up through her second-story window like Romeo, played by James Dean. She puts off his pressure to have sex. Randy will assure us later when he reads the rules of a horror film that you should, under no circumstances, have sex. Before Billy climbs back down, Sydney flashes her breasts at him, as if to show him she's trying. Late in the film, after they've had sex and Billy steps out as one of the two killers in the Ghostface costume, he tells Sydney she was bad in bed. What he means is, you didn't please me. What he suggests is, I couldn't be pleased by you. What he reveals is, I want something else. October 1996. Students gawked at the pedestrian bridge that crossed the river between the East and West Bank campuses of the university. In the night, a group of activists wheat-pasted 18 by 24-inch sheets of paper to the bridge, each one with the photo of a notable figure from history with 3 words describing their legacy, ending every time with the word queer. James Baldwin, American novelist, activist, queer. Straight students were outraged by this display. Some stuck their chewed gum to the faces of the writers, actors, politicians. Some just blacked out the word queer. I walked and looked at them, taking it all in, each Xerox page washed gold in sunrise. Though I had to keep my queerness a secret for most of the people around me, I felt in that moment like I was plugged into something bigger, something unseen that was tired of living in shadows. I asked around among my queer friends about who might have done it. It was such a small and tightly networked group despite the university's size, and it didn't take long to find out who had organized the displays. I learned several of the students were connected with my campus's LGBTQ office, though the office itself had no knowledge of their activity. The LGBT Center was in the process of organizing a speakers bureau of students who could visit campus groups, dorms, and offices to talk about their experiences being part of our community. There were about 20 of us attending a preliminary meeting of the Bureau, a mix of folks from across the acronym. The facilitator welcomed us. The purpose of this group is to build understanding between our communities and theirs, he explained. Part of the problem was that straight people, due to the politics of the closet and their own ignorance, either didn't know queer people or didn't know they knew queer people. And that lack of contact was preventing progress on queer political issues. As members of the Bureau, we prepared a version of our coming out story, whatever that meant to us, to share in front of an audience and then to answer their questions. We broke up into pairs. I spoke with a shy trans woman and we each shared our stories. She was the first trans person I'd known I'd met, and I listened to her story, her challenges, her hopes. I shared my own story, which at the time was still developing. I had come out to my parents and siblings over the prior 6 months, far too soon, before I was ready, before I understood myself and my identity. My first year of college, my dorm was home to the only other person from my hometown who attended my university. There were no secrets in dorms, and I soon heard news about my sexuality was circulating through my high school. I was worried more than anything that my parents would hear something, and probably something cruel, from someone in town before they heard it from me. Being part of the Speakers Bureau pushed me to embrace a new level of visibility as a queer person, but I wasn't alone. One of my assignments took me to a neighboring Lutheran college where I spoke with 3 other panelists about our experiences being queer. I knew we were doing important work, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in the zoo, on the opposite side of the bars, with straight people marveling at the wonder of my existence. Even though these conversations were for their benefit, each event I did for the Speakers Bureau somehow made me more me. As I embraced the vulnerability of visibility, the door of the closet drifted farther away. Coming out wasn't an event. It launched a lifelong commitment to being the fullest version of myself. I was still coming out daily to people I'd just met and people I'd known for years. For a long time, these people would confide in me that I was the first gay person they knew. That you know, I'd say. Eyes without a face. Billy is the moody, oversensitive boy who doesn't say much. His social dysfunction is charitably interpreted as normal masculinity. He exudes a dangerous kind of confidence throughout the film, a toxic masculinity, whether he's crawling up into Sydney's second-floor bedroom or, murdering classmates. Ghostface, the black-clad killer with a mask inspired by painter Edvard Munch's tormented figure in The Scream, calls Sydney up to ask her what's her favorite scary movie, but she laughs it off. What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be running out the front door. Sydney's indictment of the genre's heroines almost immediately comes back to haunt her when Ghostface appears at her house. Sydney, against her own advice, runs up the stairs into her bedroom, where the doors to her bedroom and her closet nest in such a way that neither can be fully opened. Despite her haughty hot take on the horror movie heroine, she's no different in the face of the moment, or in the heat of the moment. Billy crawls through her window a second time, a horribly timed romantic gesture that scares her. But when a cell phone drops out of his pocket, Sydney leaps to suspect Billy of being the killer. More than that, she trusts in her own belief. She gets him arrested and continues to avoid him once he's been released. When Sydney later goes to a party at Stu's house, Billy shows up against her wishes. "Dude," Stu says, winking at Billy, "what are you doing here?" The wink is a double-edged gesture. It means both, we're in cahoots, and also, I'm flirting with you. Here, knowing what we know by the end of the film, this wink is among the most meaning-laden winks of all time. October 1996. Dance music thumped through the door of the house, the windows chattering like teeth. The queer fraternity was an anchor of the queer social scene. Though I wasn't a member, I was a fan of their parties. Their house stood at the end of Fraternity Row, tucked around a corner as if seeking just a bit more privacy from the other houses, as if they were more modest, more conservative. Inside the house, where the couches and side tables crouched along the walls and spinning strobes and colored lights flashed while insistent beats played, the opposite was true. Everyone was more themselves there, as though passing through the threshold meant taking off or putting on one's public costume. I loved these parties in part because it was easy to get booze, and booze quieted my anxieties and insecurities. I feared and hated myself less when I was drunk. My queerness felt like a train passing me in the night. Cars I could look into as the windows flashed by, but something I didn't occupy, something that wasn't carrying me. I was afraid of having sex, and I was afraid of never having sex, afraid of being left alone, and of being fully myself. I stood against the wall in the basement of the campus's fraternity near the bar, nursing my cup of party punch and trying not to make eye contact with anyone, even as I gazed with longing at any number of men who passed by me. What did I want? To be seen, touched, loved, but not acknowledged, understood, or known. My friend Karen walked up and introduced me to a man I'd never seen before. He had short, dark hair with bangs swept away from his face, 5 o'clock shadow working overtime. He had a kind face. He was older, mid-20s maybe. He wasn't in school. Karen hovered for a few minutes, then excused herself to let us talk. I don't remember what the man and I talked about, but I know he asked me if I wanted to go home with him. I was outside my body, talking to him. I heard myself say, sure. I was drunk, or drunk enough, which was my goal. In the car to his place, it took 5 minutes for me to lose our location. I vanished into the city with him. I was 19. I fumbled out of my clothes at his apartment. I kissed him. I felt his body over me. He asked if he could fuck me, but I demurred. Then he fell asleep. In the morning, he offered me breakfast. I said no. I wanted to go home. Was I sure he could whip something up or we could go out? No, I said. I pulled myself into my coat to armor me. He tried to make conversation on the way home, but I couldn't. I must have seemed like a miserable person. He dropped me at the door of my dorm, and I never saw him again. Good thing he didn't murder you, a friend said at breakfast when I told her what happened. She was half joking. I hadn't considered my safety in all this, a privilege of being born white and male. The next summer, a young gay man launched a killing spree from Minneapolis, traveling down the continent to Miami, where he shot Versace on the front steps of his mansion. I watched it unfold on the news. I considered myself, somehow, lucky. All right, so that's Slice of Life. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple pieces from Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing, and then I'm going to share some new pieces as well. One of the core parts of Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing is a series of poems that are written in the form of a reading comprehension exam. So in advance, I'm sorry for that. There will not be a grade assigned at the end of this reading. But I wrote it in part because at that time in my life, I was feeling very tested by life. And it seemed to make sense to me that, like, if there were only a test on this that I could study for and complete, life would be so much easier. So what you'll hear is a paragraph and then 4 questions that are directed to the reader. This is the water cycle. Mythologies attribute destruction to an elemental force we can't see coming. Fire, flood, rivers thick with the red salt of blood. But what about the whisper, the one we make inside the ear of the man we love, when we tell him our time together's done? Breath and words a lattice work of ruin. Imagine the cloudless sky that makes rain. We don't know why it falls, but then it does. I lay my body down upon a hotel bed and told him, though I loved him, I could not be with him. There was a desert outside where it never rains, but when it does, it floods. The desert doesn't know what to do with water, so the water rushes away to someone who does. Quiz on this section. A, identify 3 grand spiritual narratives alluded to by the narrator in this passage. B, is it more or less difficult to be a homosexual? Be honest. C, draw a diagram of the nitrogen cycle. D, who is the villain of this story and every story? Okay, I'll do one more. This one's called Memory. My family has always curated the Museum of Past Wrongs. Experts now allege it has more exhibits than even the Smithsonian. In fact, there are so many you could visit one each day and never see the whole collection before you die. My wing of the museum is very dark, and I don't like to spend a lot of time in there. It smells faintly of old fruit and basil leaves. For many years, I slept in there among the ruins of myself and everything I thought was true. I'd touch a piece of glass, and my own fingers would appear on the other side, so I was never alone. Quiz on this section. A, what is your favorite exhibit in the museum described in the passage? B, will this narrator ever be able to truly love another human being? C, skip this item if you're a resident of the District of Columbia. All others insert a $5 donation. D, describe a place you visited that was always cold. I'm going to read the title poem. I'm a very nervous flyer. I like to get to the airport 2 hours in advance. I want to know where my gate is. I want food. I want water. I need everything to be just so. And then I'm always terrified that the plane is either going to be late or crash. And both are horrible. So I can't really modulate between those two. So this is how I comfort myself. Instructions between takeoff and landing. First, remain calm. Stow loose articles in the overhead bin or the space beneath the seat in front of you. Keep necessary in-flight items like prescriptions and headphones within easy reach. Command your bladder to relax. Listen to the pre-flight instructions. Identify exits. Identify suspicious passengers. Identify those who are suspicious of you. Smile at the flight attendants. They may need to assist you in case of an emergency, and you do not want them to hate you. Do not be a douchebag to the person sitting next to you. Come to an agreement about the armrest. Place your feet somewhere, out of the way. Remain in your shoes. If you feel the need to pass gas, please, God, don't. In the event of turbulence, hold on to something firm. Do not hold on to your seat neighbor. In the event of severe turbulence, hold your tongue. Do not scream and kick the seat in front of you. Do not shout, dear God, we're going to die. Do not be caught praying to your God unless you really think it's the end. Do not flail. Do not whimper. In the event of a water landing, do not change into your bathing suit. Do not change into your birthday suit. Do not change anything about what you are wearing unless it is to add more clothing. Keep your eyes on the exits. Keep your eyes on suspicious passengers and crying babies and people who are praying they might know something you don't. Or you may read a magazine. You may read Sky Mall, for instance. Consider purchasing the litter box disguised as an indoor planter, for instance. Contemplate your life, but do it silently. Contemplation does not require your voice. If you can, try to get a little sleep. When the plane begins its descent, you may look out the window to ensure the plane doesn't crash. You may stare right at the fasten seatbelt sign until it clicks off, because then you will know you haven't died. You may then unbuckle your seatbelt. You may then reach into carry-on items within easy reach. You may then thank God, or whomever you want to thank, you survived. You may thank those suspicious passengers for not being terrorists. They may even thank you back. As you deplane, please do so row by row in an orderly fashion. Remain calm. When you step off the plane, remember to breathe. I'm going to read a real sad poem about a dead dog. So I'm just really sorry. My ex-partner had a Dalmatian that was very old and disabled by the end of its life, and we tended to it. It could not get up anymore. We'd have to carry it outside, but it was the most wonderful dog. So this is a poem in memory of that dog, and I'm going to try not to cry. This is called Mercy. The Dalmatian sank for me when I set him on the grass, pausing to kneel before his bones crumbled away. I knew he was reaching toward death. I wanted to help him snatch it in his jaws. I can trace this moment forward to the end of so many things: my address, the life I'd planned, the man I held until I saw I was never his. Weeks later, dog prone on the bed where sunset gilded him each afternoon, I stroked his ears velvet and told him he would always be my good boy. When it comes to loss, I've learned to tear the limb away in one quick yank. You can shriek once, or you can cry your whole damned life. Pain has an echo. I started talking about a dog, but now I'm telling you how many times I've been a terrorist whose belief in a better world blooms only once the stem is cut. Okay, this one's a little lighter, literally and figuratively. This is a poem about blimps. And this was inspired by my coworker who I dedicated this poem to, who told me this factoid that became the title of the poem, and I was obsessed with it. Only 13 blimps remain on Earth. What? Yeah, only 13 blimps remain on Earth. Fact. Blimps are the manatees of the sky. Slow, fat, docile. A group of blimps is called a fantasy. A wild blimp can travel 200 miles a day with help from kind winds. Only 13 blimps remain on Earth. Surviving blimps live alone in captivity. Blimps seem unafraid of human contact. Blimps appear in the sky any time of year. A blimp's largest organ is its one sac lung. A fantasy of blimps will never again gather in our sky. The moon is thought to be jealous of their spectacle. Blimps are not permitted to mate with other blimps. They live a monastic life. Humans and time are the blimp's only predators. When a blimp dies, remaining blimps sense this loss, and they, for a short time, refuse the sky. We cannot be sure if blimps believe in heaven. Okay, I'm going to read one more quiz poem. This one's called Dissection. For a time, I believed people could hear my thoughts. How else did they know my most private desires, the reluctance in my heart when I looked too long at a boy in my class? There was no privacy then. I remember the anatomical model in biology class, the clear skin whose organs, color-coded, could be removed for study. The way the children tore each one out and tossed them back and forth, laughing, disgusted. I wanted their freedom, the way they never needed to learn anything about themselves. Quiz on this section. A, briefly explore the difference between the terms public and private. B, write down the names of 3 people you victimized as a child. C, why has God forsaken his children? Atheists only, why have you forsaken God? D, if freedom isn't free, calculate its unit cost based on the information in the passage. This book is a lot about dying. Sorry. It is a lot about contending with my own mortality, like being in the middle age of my life. And so I just really leaned into it at the end of the book. I'm just going to read snippets of this poem. You need to know, first of all, that there is a spoiler for Buffy the Vampire Slayer that I'm going to say out loud. If you haven't seen it yet, first of all, shame on you. And second of all, there's still a lot to enjoy. So I'll start. This is called Mortality. I still might die before I get much older than this. I still might die before you die, love, so really, we should get out and do something fun today instead of spending our time on our computers across the same room from each other. I still might die before Halley's Comet comes back around. I still might die before my nemesis gets what's coming to him. I still might die before we move out of this godforsaken hellhole and into a nice place, somewhere our plants don't die after 2 weeks. I still might die before I see a volcano. I still might die before we get to Six Flags over Georgia. I still might die, but maybe you won't die. So I want you to know right now, you shouldn't feel bad the first time you have sex with someone else. I'm rooting for you. I still might die by shark attack, my greatest fear. I still might die in a plane crash, my second greatest fear. I still might die in a home accident, the most common location of personal injuries. I still might die in my scion. Please, God, don't let me die in a scion. I still might die and have my death made into a TV movie, a Lifetime TV movie I know you will ultimately watch over and over. I still might die and the movie they make about my life might be called Mother, May I Sleep with Danger, Part 2. I still might die like Mama Cass, choking on a hoagie. I still might die like Elvis, sitting on the can. I still might die like Judy Garland, drunk and sitting on the can. I still might die like James Dean in a car wreck I totally saw coming. I still might die in a car crash, which probably wouldn't surprise anyone who's ever been a passenger in my Scion. I still might die of tuberculosis. I still might die of AIDS, cancer, flesh-eating virus, a bowel obstruction, an embolism, an aneurysm, a stroke, a bloody nose I can't control, a perforated ulcer, gangrene, scurvy, sepsis, multiple sclerosis, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Lou Gehrig's disease, hepatitis C, jaundice, liver failure, kidney failure, arsenic poisoning, an undetected heart abnormality that has been silently ticking away like a bomb inside my chest, or bird flu. I still might die before I visit Legoland in Denmark, not California. I still might die like Joyce Summers on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and you'll come home and find me on the couch, but I won't be breathing, and you'll try to save me, but you won't be able to. I still might die and come back to life like the vampire in the morgue at the end of that episode. I doubt it, but I still might. I still might die before I have destroyed every copy of Stephenie Meyer's Twilight I can find. I still might die before I ever get around to reading Dune. I still might die before I finish writing another book that is better than Twilight, but shorter than Dune. I still might die in the Grand Canyon, which I won't mind unless it is by falling from a great height, in which case it would be my third most feared way to die. I still might die before I see the Rocky Horror Picture Show and a midnight movie. I still might die wearing fishnets at a screening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I still might die while playing the role of Columbia or Magenta, although I'm really more of a Brad. I still might die after doing television commercials for medication to treat herpes, erectile dysfunction, overactive bladder, restless leg syndrome, or yeast infections. I still might die before they invent a pill that makes you happy without leaving you sad. I still might die before I need to stop wanting a pill that makes you happy without leaving you sad or impotent. I still might die with a computer full of unpublished manuscripts like Emily Dickinson, minus the computer. I still might die like Walt Whitman, completely misjudged and underappreciated in my time. I still might die like James Merrill, rich but sad. I still might die like Robert Lowell, complicated and sad. I still might die like John Berryman, sad and falling at a great speed from a high bridge, which is a significant fear of mine, see above. I still might die like Sylvia Plath, accidentally, but leaving behind a book that changes the lives of many other people. I still might die like Anne Sexton, beautiful and jealous and sad. I still might die like River Phoenix or Heath Ledger, although it might first imply that my genius had been actually recognized instead of merely imagined by me. I still might die like the character Jake Gyllenhaal played in Brokeback Mountain, beaten to death for being gay. I still might die like Shirley MacLaine's character in The Children's Hour, struck by a falling tree for being gay. I still might die like Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Less Than Zero from an overdose after giving like a ton of blowjobs to rich white guys in Palm Springs for being gay. I still might die like any number of real people who were killed for being gay. I still might die fighting for my life. I still might die feeling like this. I still might die while having sex, which is probably my most hoped for way to die. I still might die while having the best sex of my life, which seems fair. I still might die in that shiny, shimmery calm after sex when our sweaty bodies fall onto the bed next to each other and just try to absorb everything about that moment. That might kill me one of these times. That would be okay. I still might die before I figure out how to get happy. I still might die, sure, but I might die happy. Okay, I have just a couple more to share. These are new, not published, so stuff I'm working on. I mentioned in my talk earlier that I've been writing poems of people who were cursed by the Greek gods. But they're in therapy, telling their therapist what has happened to them. And I have many of them, but I brought one about Actaeon, who was a hunter who accidentally saw Athena naked while she was taking a bath. And even though it was accidental, she was like, "How dare you," and turned him into a stag. And he was a hunter, so it's kind of like the hunter becoming the hunted. So this is Actaeon in therapy. Wrong place, wrong time. Glimpsed a goddess outside her unmentionables, so now when I have a stag party, it's literal. Hooves, an exclamation of antlers shouting from my head. The hunter became the hunted. Sounds a bit lazy, doesn't it? Nature decided a predator's eyes face straight ahead, while animals doomed to be devoured peer from the skull's sides. And so my eyes drifted from a set of headlights to a set of white walls. Of course I ran away, a brawny Bambi on spindles, knock-kneed and clumsy. My pack of dogs, attuned to the hunt, did their job. Who am I to discipline them, when discipline is how I made them? Was it justice, then, that my own army deposed their general because I smelled delicious? Because hunger unites every beast like religion, each mouth devout. I never hungered for a deity. The hunt was my prayer. When the dogs overtook me, I screamed, but what I meant to say was, "Good boys." So this next poem is inspired by the poet Seamus Isaac Fay, who has a poem that's in response to a Rilke poem. So this is dedicated to both Rilke and Seamus Isaac Fay. It's called Letter to a Younger Poet. If you're reading this, it's already too late to back out now. You're a poet. A crocus reaching from the soil to pluck the sun from its nest in the sky. You told someone you love the moon, but you couldn't say why beyond ancient and glowing and lunacy. You hear the chugging of a freight train in the cashier's voice when they hand you change and say, "Have a lovely day." People will ask you if you were born this way. You were. Or if your parents somehow failed. They did. And your confidence that two things can be true dooms you to a life of rearranging commas over the course of several hours only to put them back where you had them the first time. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Others before you have survived the assault of mock orange, the blackbird's twitching black eye surveilling you from the emerald foliage, the redhead down the street who eats men like air. Your found family understands you. Never tell a soul of your avocation. Consider it a secret identity, as though you were a hero to nothing more than language itself. Each day you'll stain pages with ink as those like you have done for centuries. Much of it won't be worth reading. Much of it you'll discover is just a mirror. So gaze into it. Discover the layers of self within yourself, the many voices. When the crocus blooms, bees investigate the crime with their black and yellow caution. They pull nothing from the bud but their own discovery. The pollen clung to them with the strength of unshakable faith. Poets call this part of the poem epiphany. I'm going to end with a love poem. This has had a lot of titles, but I just decided the best title would be Poem for Bill. We kiss before we fall asleep. We kiss when the other has finally woken up. We kiss in the walk-in closet when one of us isn't wearing pants and the other doesn't want to. We kiss when neither of us are wearing pants, and pants are not critical to the phenomenology of kissing. We kiss when one of us is still a little pissed off after the argument because a kiss is a little like glue and it puts us back together. We kiss at the wedding, but not when it would upstage the people getting married. We kiss at the beach, and once we kissed on a gondola, and once we kissed on the giant Ferris wheel overlooking Elliott Bay, and we kissed at Six Flags like teenagers who exist only to kiss in theme parks. We kiss on the airplane, and we kiss in the Uber, and then we christen the hotel room with a kiss that really deserves a capital K for how much work it's doing. We kiss in my father's house and my brother's house and your aunt's house, and we kiss in the parking lot at the cemetery where your parents are inurned. We kissed after I visited my mother's ashes in Sun City West, and I cried as hard as I did when she died 11 years earlier. And we kissed as I wished she could have known you. We kiss in Palm Springs, our favorite place to kiss. Sometimes by the pool, and sometimes at the little gay bars, trying so hard. It's hard to think of places we haven't kissed. Russia, for sure. And never when we thought a kiss might jeopardize our safety, and that's the funny thing about being gay sometimes. A kiss can get you killed if you do it where someone doesn't want you to. But we kiss everywhere else, and we kiss for everyone who wants to but hasn't yet, and all the people who used to and still want to, and anyone who never did. That's a lot of kissing the world needs from us. But when I'm kissing you, it's just for you. And honestly, it's for me too. I'm going to kiss you after I read you this poem, and this poem is also another very important kind of kiss. Thank you.
That was the best poem ending of a reading I've ever been to. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I also think that we should change our thesis guidelines for the fiction students, and the criteria should just be better than Twilight and shorter than Dune. I think that would be excellent. So David, you can do that on your way home. Questions for Charlie? We have a little bit of time left for questions, I think.
Yes, I have a question. So in Slice of Life, you clearly bring in literary theory and critique. And as an English, bachelor in English myself, how do you think that affected your fiction writing and your poetry going forward? Like, was it a hindrance in the end, or did it actually, like, boost your ability to write fiction?
That's interesting. I have always felt that an awareness of theory has been beneficial. In part because when I'm making choices, I know why I'm making them, and I have a desired outcome. So I would say, like, very little is accidental. Some things are discovery, but I would say that that discovery is always the outcome of that kind of experimentation. And in Slice of Life, I think I was also aware that by writing memoir, I'm like subjecting my life story to interpretation by narrative theorists, right? And so going into it with that expectation, while doing it to films, made it feel like it's okay for you to come for me. I'm ready.
What other horror movies have you studied and analyzed with like queer characters?
The characters are not explicitly queer, but I think they're kind of queer coded in The Descent, which is which I write about in Slice of Life. That's probably one of my top 3 horror movies.
The European ending or the American ending?
Yes.
I think it's the European.
I feel like the European ending is less literal and more open-ended than the American ending, right? Like the American ending, there's the jump scare at the end, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's a little bit cheesy and confusing. But the European ending is just her coming out of the soil, is that right?
Coming out of the cave and she goes in the car and then we realize that she's like infected or something.
Okay, that one I have not seen, but I like that better.
Yeah. It ends with like her seeing her daughter's birthday cake again, and then she wakes up and she's still in the cave.
That seems more realistic.
I'm claustrophobic, so I kind of love and hate it. But
I also think The Neon Demon, which I write about in this book, which is a horrible movie that I hate, is very queer coded. In fact, like the Jenna Maloney character in that is obviously obsessed with Dakota Fanning. No, Elle Fanning in that movie. But then I think even the other 2 models, like I can't tell you what happens at the end. It's gross and it's weird, but like it's really queer also in a way that I don't like.
Miles?
I was wondering what you think about like the rise in like anti-queer, anti-trans like rhetoric and kind of like the role that literature, queer, poetry, fiction, whatever you plays in now.
Well, I'm very distressed by it. I was hoping that we had put that in the past. I think the history of queerness is trying to make the world a better place for the people who are coming after you. And I know I benefited from that myself, even though there was still work to do when I arrived. And I feel like now there's still work to do again, but we all have to do that work together. So I think when it is safe to do so, I think showing up and being your unapologetically queer self and reminding people that you are a human being who thinks and feels and loves and hurts is the only way that we can really unpack that rhetoric, because that rhetoric is trying to dehumanize us and turn us all into objects, and especially trans people, who I'm deeply concerned about right now, and non-binary people. So those of us who have more privilege in the world, so like people like me who are white and male and middle-aged, I think it's our job to step in between the people in the trans community who are at risk and the people who are going to cause them harm as much as we can, either on the page or in real life.
Nick, you have a question?
Okay, yeah. My question is a lot less serious. So have you really never seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
I have seen it.
Okay, but just
Just
not
not
in
in
like
Midnight.
Not in person, not like
Okay.
at a theater, not at a live show.
That is my experience as well, and as someone who took a cahoot on essentially midnight screenings of it, like, you know, it's like really figuring out, oh, this is kind of like a Rosetta Stone for it,
Yeah.
like for hieroglyphics. It's
Yeah.
very odd. I wish you luck in that endeavor.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I have to study before I go to that.
Oh, dude, no, I watched it like 5 times, and even then I feel like I'm missing some bits,
Yeah.
definitely.
there's a theater in Santa Ana that has a resident
I had heard about
Frida,
this.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Frida Cinema is amazing.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
So you mentioned how you were struggling coming to terms with your sexuality and you were worried like your parents would hear before. Did you use writing to cope with coming out with your coming out, or did you kind of resist that and only write about your queerness later on in your sexual journey?
I think writing was actually the first way I encountered my own queerness, to be honest, but it was something that I immediately deleted. Like, I wrote it and I was like, delete that file. But yeah, that was an important moment, because like seeing it in front of me and having to contend with that truth, I think I wasn't prepared to deal with it at that time, but I think, you know, I realized it was not safe for me to be gay where I was. I was in rural Wisconsin, in the most conservative county in Wisconsin. And my promise to myself was like, once I get out of here and into a place where it's safe, I am gonna figure this out. And that was what I did. So one of my greatest skills as a person is just making a plan and then executing it. And unfortunately, that's also how I came out. I was like, I'm gonna come out. I'm out. Not really thinking about the impact of that choice. So if I could go back in time and talk to myself, I'd be like, listen, it's cool that you know this. You don't have to tell everyone right now. Like, figure some stuff out and then talk about it when you know more. But yeah, it was, it's how I move through life, is kind of fumbling and figuring it out as I go.
As someone who also works in memoir and bringing one's own personal history into conversation with existing stories, in your case, film, something that I've found that I struggle with is, I guess, a kind of imposter syndrome of like, does my story deserve to even be on the page alongside these other stories? Is that something you felt, and how do you deal with that?
I'm gonna just reveal to you in confidence that I wrote Splice of Life with movies in it because I thought my lived experience wasn't enough. So keep in mind that my boyfriend's uncle murdered a woman, right? Like, and I was like, oh, maybe that's not important enough to write about. I should put a movie in there too. So yes, I totally understand what you mean. And for me, bringing the movies in was not just a way to capture like my own obsession and my interest in them, and also talking about how narrative functions. But it was a way to say like, look, this story matters because it's also over here. And this is something that people are interested in. I didn't need to do that. But I'm glad I did. It was, instructional for me. And I think as I continue to write about lived experience, I'm not relying so much on like those permissive strategies to make me feel like it's okay. But you also have to find your comfort level with the work that you're doing and making it feel okay for you to do. So if that is, collaging different things together because it makes you feel like this is a more whole story, then I think, yeah, do that. But also, every person's lived experience is valuable. Your story is going to resonate with someone, and you don't know who that person is. That's the magic of being a writer.
Questions?
You wrote a lot about like supernatural franchises, Buffy, Twilight, Scream. Does that like scene just draw you in? What about it that like fascinates you so much?
So I grew up without any religious tradition, and God was the first boogeyman that I ever knew because he was always watching and he knew what I was thinking. So like I think that is really the origin of all my interest in things that are supernatural and occult. And I also, like, as a teenager, I know we all go through like our witch phase. Like my witch phase like kind of never went away, and I've always felt like there are evil forces in the world that are probably trying to kill us all the time. And I don't think it's God anymore. Probably.
Other questions?
Hi. This was kind of a two-part, but in relation to the pieces that you wrote in the format of the ever lovely reading comprehension pieces, one half of it is, do you think that adhering to a very specific format like that is kind of similar to the permissive techniques that you mentioned earlier? Or is it something that you adopted later into your career? And second half is, are there any other specific formats that you're thinking of playing in future projects?
Yeah, I mean, I love writing in existing forms that are not poetic. So like a grocery list. So I'll start there. Yes, I'm always thinking about how I can adapt something familiar and make it strange with poetry. The form of that poem was actually an accident. And this is what I mean about discovery. Like, you should always be led by discovery. I had opened a Word document and I wrote this paragraph, and then I looked at it for a minute and I was like, enter, quiz on this section. And I wrote 4 questions and I was like, what am I doing? Went to a new page, did it again. Went to a new page, did it again. And so I think part of that process was like how a visual artist might do studies or sketches of something they want to design. And so like I was kind of learning what the form could do if I was going to do something with it. I never expected it would become the core of a book. And it wasn't until I had gone through, like 45, 50 iterations of it that I looked back and I was like, well, what do I have here and what's duplicating? And like I did a lot of rearranging questions in revision more than anything else, and then throwing stuff away too. Does that answer your question? Okay. The answer is it was an accident and I don't know.
Can you talk a little bit about working in more than one genre? Because we have a lot of students who do that.
Yeah. So first of all, if you were here earlier, you heard me say genre is fake. It's not real. Don't let it determine who you are or what you write. Genre is a problem for bookstores and publishers to figure out, not writers. I also believe that everything is a subset of poetry. So like I started there, but like fiction is a form of poetry. That's just how I think of it now. In part because poets are always the forgotten ones in the literary world. And I'm like, no, we're the most important. We belong here. We invented writing. If you'll go back farther enough. I think what I really want to do as a writer is tell stories that people are surprised by and really interested in how they're told to them, and that sometimes make them laugh or cry, or both. But I think I have a sense of what I'm going to write before I start writing. Like I know when something's going to be a poem. I know when something's going to be fiction. I know when I'm going to write memoir. Memoir, I think, is actually where I do the most experimentation, though, weirdly. And I had written an earlier essay that was all about not having health insurance before the Affordable Care Act and Grey's Anatomy. And a couple other weird factors. So I think that's how I was learning how to braid things together. I think that essay has potential, but it never really fit anywhere. But I think you get to determine what you're doing. And someone asked me earlier about, the question was something about the complexity of the work when people encounter it. And the thing that's really important to me as a writer, that when someone picks up a book of mine, they know how to read it. So like those reading comprehension poems, like I really want the reader to understand what they're supposed to do when they encounter that work and not feel confused or frustrated or kept out of the work. At the same time, I think that my work often has deeper resonance with queer people, and I like that too. So like straight people can read it and they'll be like, that's cool. And then a queer person's like, that's cool. Like that's what I want to happen.
Can you talk a little bit about the different path to publication for Splice of Life, a memoir, and a poetry collection?
Yeah, the short version is it's not good. Poetry is largely happening through book contests now, or through open reading periods with publishers. I can tell you that Instructions Between Takeoff and Landing was one of 656 manuscripts that were submitted to the competition, and it did not win, but it was the editor's selection. So the editor of the press pulled it out and picked it, and I cried, because I was like, when does that ever happen? It's hard, it's really hard, but I think if there's any benefit to this contest landscape, it's that you get a sense of how much your work is landing and resonating with editors. But it is very exhausting and time-consuming, and it can be expensive too, and I don't like any of those parts of it. Splice of Life.
Do you remember how many times you sent the poetry collection out?
Don't throw things at me. I think it was 3.
Okay.
It was not very many, and that's been true of all. Nanopedia I sent out like 30 times. That was my book before this one, and all of my other books were taken on the first or second submission.
Wow.
I know, it's gross. I'm so sorry. But I'll never have that experience again. That's the good news. I'm like, the luck is gone. Splice of Life, I revised in a workshop, and a literary agent came and talked to us about how we might pitch our books. And when I told her about mine, she's like, ooh, I don't know that you're going to get a traditional publisher for that. You might want to think about like a university press or a small press. and she mentioned Hanifa Durakib's book as being something that like she was thought was similar in scope, and so she's like, try $2 radio. They took a chance on him, and look what happened. So I did that. I queried a bunch of presses at universities, and they're great because they will write you and tell you no. They'll be like, thank you so much, we read it, and no. And other places you might never hear back, like if you're trying to get an agent, which I also tried half-heartedly. But this book was taken by an indie publisher through their competition, which I did not win. And instead of being published because I won, the editor reached out and was like, we really want to publish this whether it wins the competition or not. Are you interested? And I was like, I am interested in no longer finding a publisher. Yes, let's do this. So that's how it came into the world. But it is, it's a journey for everybody. It's really hard. Don't be discouraged by it because your work is going to resonate. So you have to believe in the work first when you're doing this process, because I don't know, I've published like one poem in the past year. Everything gets rejected. And I've been doing this a long time. Like, that is horrible. Don't they know who I am?
Other questions? Okay, I have one more question.
Okay.
You have a full-time job, you work hard, you've only published one poem this past year. How do you keep writing and keep the rest of your life intact as well?
I keep a really strict schedule, and that's the only way I can do it. So I do have a full-time job. I also have a part-time teaching job that I do on the side in my free time. But it's also not very time-consuming, I'll say that. I spend maybe an hour a week on it, so it's easy to manage. But for a long time, I've always made time to write. And what I found is that no one wants to meet with me before 8 a.m. So all of that time is mine. I am a morning person. If you are not, that's okay. Don't feel bad. But I wake up, I go to the gym, I come home, I sit down and write for an hour, and that's it. That's my writing effort for the day. And whether I write 20 words or I write 2,000 words, it doesn't matter. I'm there for that time. What I found after I started doing this was that it was so easy to start writing when I would sit down after I'd been doing it for a while, because my little subconscious brain, which works so hard and I never need to know about it, is constantly thinking about the book when I'm not working on it. And so when I come to the computer, it's like, cool, I know right where we're going to start. And also, here's my other tip. Never stop writing at the end of a scene. Always stop in the middle. Don't finish it. Because when you come back, you can pick up right where you left off. You know what you were going to say, and that'll carry you right into whatever comes after that.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. This was amazing. Thank you.
There are books for sale in the back. If you already have a book and you want Charlie to sign it, he can sign books. There are a few little